Whether it's 100k, 100 miles, a multi-day bikepacking trip, or simply your longest bike ride ever, these are my top 10 tips for success. I'm Tom, bikepacker, ultra racer, and all-round cycling fanatic. And these are the tips that have helped me on my long rides and bikepacking trips. So let's get into it. Number 1, eating and drinking. It seems fairly obvious, but this is probably one of the most important parts to a successful long distance bike ride. When it comes to eating, this isn't just on the bike ride itself, it's also in the build up and after the ride. So before the ride, we are carbing up at least a day before, perhaps longer, particularly if you're going for a multi-day trip. So I use this as an excuse to pretty much eat what I like, but I focus on things that are heavy in carbs, so things like pasta, pizza, all the really enjoyable stuff that's going to build your glycogen stores so you're setting off fully energized and ready to go. Obviously, eating during the ride is also really important, and I don't wait until I'm hungry when I'm riding. I start eating pretty much straight away. So actually, before the ride itself starts in the morning, I'm having a big bowl of porridge and then perhaps a banana or energy gel on the way to the ride itself. There's nothing worse than waiting until you're hungry or you've bonked and then trying to catch up by eating everything you've got and feeling absolutely awful. You could have real food, sports nutrition, or a mix of the two. I tend to do a bit of a mix. I might take some Haribos, cereal bars, banana, and in my bottle I might have something simple like sugar and water with a bit of salt in it, which is cheap. And then I supplement that with some sports nutrition, perhaps some energy gels, some bars, or I might carry a bit of carb mix with me because it's easy to transport around and top your bottle up as you go in. If you're getting more scientific about it, you might be aiming for a certain amount of carbs per hour. I tend to try and have perhaps 80 to 100 grams of carb an hour, but for most of us, simply keeping on eating will be enough. And of course, stopping mid-ride for a bit of cake, coffee, or some lunch also helps boost those energy stores. After you've completed the ride, it's also important to focus on some good nutrition, things that are high in protein. I like to have quite a few fruit and veg because typically you run yourself down a little bit, and doing that will boost your recovery and have you back on the bike much quicker. I briefly touched on it, but water and keeping hydrated is also massively important. Again, don't wait until you're really thirsty to have a drink. Keep drinking from the very beginning. I typically aim to have about 500 millilitres to 1 litre of water an hour. Of course, it's a bit weather dependent. If it's hot, I'll probably be drinking more. If it's cold and wet, I'll probably be drinking less. And every few hours, I like to have some electrolytes because I find that prevents muscle cramp and just keeps my body functioning as it should. Ideally, before you have your big ride, you'll have tested your food, what you can stomach. Don't go taking a brand new product on your big ride, else you might find yourself diving into a bush at the side of the road. Number 2, make sure your bike is well serviced and running well. You don't want to make your long ride even longer by having to stop to repair those annoying punctures or a dropped chain. So check your tyres, your chain wear, that type of thing before you head off. And if you're not confident doing it yourself, perhaps take your bike down the bike shop and get them to check it, just to make sure it's not going to fall apart mid-ride. And a well-maintained bike is also actually quite important for comfort. If parts are worn, your body can move in a slightly different way and you might start getting discomfort in your knee, something which might stop you from completing your big ride. This has happened to me in the past where my pedals have become worn, hadn't really realised, and then partway through a big ride you start to feel a little pain in your knee and it slowly gets worse and worse as the ride goes on. And then you realise it wasn't really your body that was causing the issue, it was an issue with the bike. And on that occasion, if I'd have maintained it a bit better, changed my cleats and make sure the pedals weren't too worn, I probably wouldn't have faced that issue. And of course, keeping your bike serviced and running efficiently will mean you'll complete the route with less stopping and take less time, and hopefully, fingers crossed, you avoid the worst case scenario, which is having to be picked up by a loved one. And if you ever had to do it, making that call to be picked up isn't the funnest one to do, and you might find yourself having to do some extra chores to make up for that lift home. Number 3, riding with others. Perhaps plan your big ride or your trip with some friends and do it together. Not only will this provide a motivation to train to get to the ride, but also during the ride itself. Often people don't fully sync up in terms of their moods. At one time, one person riding might be unhappy and miserable, the other person might be really happy, so you can kind of bounce off each other and use each other's energy to get you through it, because 1 hour later the person that was happy might be miserable and the person that was miserable might be happy. So you can keep each other motivated, boosting your mood and working together to get to your goal. And doing something together, having a shared experience, is always, or normally, quite a bit more fun than doing it completely on your own. And at the very least, having someone to talk to also passes the time. Number 4, chunk it up. If you're anything like me, setting off on a big ride can be quite nerve-wracking. You can be quite anxious about how far you've got to travel, how long you've got to do it in. And when you've only ticked off that first kilometre, first mile and think, oh, I've got another 99 more to go, that can be quite a daunting thing. So what I like to do is break my ride up into smaller sections. So for example, there might be a cafe at the halfway point, so I'm only really focusing on that first half of the ride. Or I might break it down even more. There might be water stops or other resupply points along the way. So it might be, I'm going to ride the first 20 miles and I'm going to stop at this shop and get some more water. Then I'm going to ride the next 20 and there's a convenience store, I'm going to grab some more food. Or there might be milestones on the route. So it could be in 15 miles there's this climb, and I know in 30 miles we're going to go over this river in this canal, and that'll be a nice view. It's something to look forward to. And that can play out on a ride that's over one day or over multiple days. Obviously, if you're on a multiple day ride, you might be breaking it down into where you're going to be sleeping each day, and then breaking it down further for the days you're riding. So those important cafe stops, resupply points, lovely views and vistas that you're looking forward to seeing. And by doing that, you're only really focusing on the next key point along the route rather than the whole ride itself, which is much more easy for your mind to manage. Number 5, try riding somewhere new. Some of my favourite long rides have been places I've never ridden before. If I aim to do a long ride from home, it can be a little bit boring. You know the roads, you know what's coming up. But if you go somewhere new, everything is a little bit more interesting. Roads you've never been on, views you've never seen, climbs you've never done, people you've never met. So you could plot to do a ride somewhere completely different or borrow someone else's route that might be on commute, for instance. Something I quite like to do is get the train somewhere and ride home, which in a way also commits you then to riding that further distance. And the very act of riding somewhere new brings in that bit of extra excitement, that sort of sense of exploration, and sort of distracts you from that thought of, oh no, I've got to ride 100 miles, 1,000 kilometres, 7 days. It makes it very much more about the adventure and seeing these new places. Number 6, to provide a little bit of motivation or a challenge, you could enter an event or a sportif or an audax or something similar like that. In something like that, the route's probably set out for you, and there might be feed stations and checkpoints, which again help chunk the route down, but also mean you might have to carry a bit less stuff because, you know, every so often along the route you're going to be stopping somewhere where you can top up your water, your energy drinks, have some food, take 5 minutes off the bike and work towards the ultimate goal of completing that long ride. And if you do an event, there'll be others there too, also doing a similar challenge, trying to do this long ride, and you might have a shared experience with them. And again, chatting to someone along the way, like doing it with your friends, is a nice distraction away from the overall distance and makes the time go past a little bit quicker. You might even earn yourself a t-shirt or a medal. Number 7, entertainment. Surely riding your bike's entertainment enough, but when you're riding a really long day on the bike or multiple days on the bike, you sometimes need something to distract yourself away from what you're actually doing, particularly in a moment of misery. Perhaps the weather's really bad or you're feeling a bit tired and you just need to get through those few hours to reach that place where you're going to stop or have some food. You could listen to some music. People who often use bone conducting headphones so you can still hear the traffic around you if you're riding on the road. You can kind of focus on being present and just listening to all your senses and taking in what's going on around you, which can be quite nice. Or you could do some singing. I often find myself singing, making up random songs as I'm going along. None of them are going to get to number 1, and most of them are probably about the dog. But it's a little distraction, it's a bit of fun. Although, if someone hears you, it can be a little embarrassing. Number 8, it's important to remember that the hard bits will pass. Perhaps it's a big climb, perhaps you're just feeling tired, or perhaps you're a little bit anxious about how far you've still got to go and the time you've got to do it in. But those little slumps will pass and you'll hopefully be back to feeling good before you know it. Having a why can help you in getting through those bad times, so perhaps have a think about why you're doing this ride. Maybe you're doing it for charity to raise some money and that will probably get you through. Maybe it's just a personal challenge and you want to be able to say that you've ridden 100 miles in a day. Or perhaps it was just about getting away from everything and spending a load of time on the bike and enjoying being out in the outdoors. And of course, you could always imagine an alternative scenario. So perhaps you could be at work instead of riding a bike, and that might change your mindset to appreciate what you're doing and enjoying the moment. But 9 times out of 10, actually, what can often cause these moments of misery is a lack of food. So perhaps you haven't eaten or drunk enough during your ride. So if you do feel a bit down, have some food, have a drink, and then see how you feel about half hour later. I've been quite surprised in the past where I've felt absolutely dreadful. I've stopped at somewhere for a chicken wrap or a McDonald's for a meal, and an hour later I'm back to feeling good and enjoying the ride again. Number 9, something we're all probably guilty of, and that is setting off too fast. If you're on a long ride or a multi-day ride, you know this isn't going to be over very quickly. So don't set off like you're on a short ride and you're going to be home in an hour. Take it easy, warm up and ease into the ride. You can always go faster at the end, but there's nothing worse than setting off too hard, getting perhaps 50% through the ride and then being absolutely smashed and dragging yourself round to the end. So control that ego and that excitement and avoid blowing up by not going too hard at the start. Number 10, just do it. You can do some training, you can think about it, you can plan a route, but sometimes you've literally just got to get out there and give it a shot. Try not to overthink about whether you're going to be able to finish the ride and all the eventualities and the things that could go wrong. Just jump on the bike, get those pedals turning, and before you know it, you'll be in the zone and enjoying that ride. I was recently chatting to someone about one of their techniques and they adopt the so what approach. So that's, so what if I don't finish? So what if I get puncture? So what if I get lost? So what if I get hungry? So what if I don't actually enjoy it? And by doing that, you can kind of work through these little anxieties that might stop you from actually doing the long ride in the first place. So just get out there and do it, and keep that so what phrase in the back of your head every time you think about something that could go wrong. So what? You'll be able to sort it out as you go. No problem will be too big that you won't be able to overcome it. And if you don't finish your ride, so what? Take the lessons you learned from this ride, apply them to the next one, and I'm sure it will be a success. So there are 10 of my tips for a successful long distance bike ride, be it your first 100 miles, a multi-day trip, or simply the furthest ride you've ever done. I'm always keen to learn from others and understand how they approach their big rides and big goals. So if you've got any tips yourself, feel free to drop them in the comments below. And if you've enjoyed this video, give it a like, and I'd really like it if you could subscribe to the channel for more of my biking tips and tricks, adventures and routes. So until the next time, see you in the next one.